This is the Easy Betting Show. My name is Easy, and we are back talking college football. Week 5 picks. Got a bunch of good ones today. Should be a good week. Not a ton of big matchups, but a lot of really good games. That should be a pretty fun weekend. Starts off on Thursday, a couple games Friday. So we're going to go through the entire slate. If you have not watched my videos before, I do not do the entire slate, so you don't have to worry about watching that long of a video. I have 11 that I like this week, so I'm going to go through the 11 that I like. And then new to the college shows, for those of you that have been watching, I have a couple parlays that I'm going to throw out at the end, kind of like I do on the NFL shows as well. So hang out and get those parlays at the end, because I've actually been doing fairly well with my college parlays lately. So figured I would share those as well. Like I said, Thursday and Friday games, so I'm going to go through those first before hitting the Saturday slate. And I have most of them are in the afternoon or evening slate. I didn't really find any late games that I like. So if you're looking for some of those, find them somewhere else, because I don't have them. But yeah, I'm just going to hop right into it because, like I said, I do have 11 this week. So I want to go on ahead and get into the plays as quickly as possible. Starting off with the Thursday night game, Army at Temple. Army is 12.5 point favorites. They are minus 480 on the money line. Temple is plus 360 on the money line, and the over-under is 45.5. Temple upset Utah State 45-29 last week. They scored 24 straight points in the game. They actually looked pretty good. I don't think a lot of people had Temple winning that. But 17 of those points came on a short field thanks to the defense, and they also had 3 deep passes that I don't see them getting regularly within this normally relatively stagnant offense. Last week kind of seemed to be a little bit of an outlier game for Army. On the other side of the ball, Army is being back to the triple option run heavy team. They've run almost 34% more than the average team does. And Temple's rush defense is ranked 130th in the country. So I have a very strong feeling that Army is going to do whatever they want on the ground in this game. On top of that, Temple's coming off a short week to prepare for the triple option, which is not good for any team. You know, if you go back and look at pretty much any interview a defensive coordinator has had where they reference the triple option in the interview, they're going to say that that's the hardest thing to prepare for. And if you only have 1 week to prepare for it, you're basically screwed. So I think Temple is probably going to get eaten up in this game on the ground. And I don't think their offense can do much of anything that they were able to do last week in an outlier game. I think Army rolls here, and I'm going Army minus 12.5, minus 110, 1.1 unit on that one. The next one that I'm going to do is the Friday night game. There is 2 games on Friday, but one of the Friday night games is Virginia Tech at Miami. I'm in Virginia. I can't bet that, so I'm not going to talk about it. I will say, though, I think Miami covers. I don't think Virginia Tech's very good. I think their offensive coordinator is horrible. So if you really want to take in that game, I would definitely say to go Miami. That being said, the one that I actually did bet on is Washington at Rutgers. And the spread on that one is Rutgers minus 2.5. They're minus 132 on the money line. Washington is plus 110 on the money line, and the over-under is 44.5. Washington making its first trip across the country and on a Friday too, which probably isn't that big of a benefit for them, obviously. And Washington's offense hasn't really been great to start off the year. They're only averaging 21.5 games in their 2 Power 4 games. Their passing hasn't been great, but their rushing game has been pretty decent. They're ranked 60th in the nation right now. They averaged almost 5 yards a carry last week. So the offense pretty much relies on the run game. The defense has also been pretty good, especially against the run, where they're only allowing an average of 106 yards on the ground per game, which will be good specifically against this Rutgers team, where the offense basically runs on the ground exclusively. They don't do much in the passing game. Manangai, I don't know how to say his name. Manangai, whatever the hell, y'all know who I'm talking about. If not, Google it. And Brown, both have been pretty impressive on the year so far for Rutgers. And this team runs through the run game. So this game will basically come down to, can the Washington defense stop the Scarlet Knights run game? If they can, they win. I think their defense is going to keep them in this game. I think the offense is going to do just enough to keep them in it. I think this will probably be fairly low scoring. And I'm going Washington money line plus 110 with 1 unit. I don't think the travel affects them as much as people think that it might. They also could have left a day early. I saw something about that, but don't quote me on that because I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I think Washington has a great chance in this one, and I think they have a good chance of winning. It's going to depend on, can they stop the run game, though. Moving on to Saturday, the first one I'm talking about is Maryland at Indiana. If you've been listening to me, you know that I've bet on Indiana pretty much every week they've played, but for good reason. Indiana is minus 6.5. They're minus 245 on the money line. Maryland is plus 198 on the money line. Over under is 53.5. I think this is going to be a very high scoring game. Both of these teams have incredibly good offenses so far. Maryland's offense averaging almost 35 points a game this year, averaging over 300 yards passing, 155 yards on the ground. But granted, this has been against pretty bad defenses. The best defense that they've probably seen was Michigan State, maybe UVA, but I don't think UVA is very good. So I kind of take that one with a grain of salt. But yeah, even with playing poor defenses and poor teams, they've still managed to put up a lot of points. So I think that does say something, even though it isn't against these great teams yet. On the other side, same thing for Indiana. They haven't really played anybody. They did just beat the shit out of UCLA last week. But again, how good is UCLA? But that being said, they have a lot of options for Rourke to throw to. They have a really good run game with like 3 different running backs. They're averaging almost 300 yards a game, over 200 yards rushing a game. And they've also averaged over 50 points a game this year. So again, take it with a grain of salt because of the teams they're playing. But if you're averaging 50 points a game, it doesn't matter who you're playing. You have a good offense. So with these two offenses rolling like they are and neither defense really being great, I'm taking the over 53.5 here. I think it's a really low over for these two offenses. And I don't think there's any way they don't get to 54. So over 53.5, minus 110. So 1.1 unit on that one as well. Next game we're talking about, we're going with baby Mahomes and Nebraska playing at Purdue. Nebraska is minus 10.5, minus 360 on the money line. Purdue is plus 280 on the money line. And the over under is 47.5. Baby Mahomes has looked good. You know, I talked about this game last week, and I don't remember what I said, but I'm pretty sure it was that Baby Mahomes has to show me something. And he looked good last week. You know, they lost the game. It was their first loss on the season to Illinois, but the offense still performed really well. They put up almost 350 yards of offense. I think the killer for them in the game last week was penalties. They had 9 penalties for 89 yards. And that really could have been the difference maker in a close game. I definitely think that gets cleaned up this week, at least for the majority. And then on the other side for Purdue, their offense just hasn't really been able to do much. Week 1, they had a 49-0 blowout win against Indiana State. But then after that, they haven't been able to do much of anything. Last week, Card only threw for 56 yards. He had 1 touchdown. He also had an interception. The thing for them last week was the running game. Maccabee did have 168 yards on the ground, but they only had 13 first downs and went 2 of 9 on third downs. I just don't think Purdue's offense is going to be able to keep up with this Nebraska offense, and I think Nebraska rolls here. So I'm going Nebraska minus 10.5. That's even money, so I'm going to throw a unit on that one. Another military team in the next one, we got Navy at UAB. Navy is minus 3.5, minus 172 on the money line. UAB is plus 142 on the money line. The over under is 57.5, which seems like a kind of high over under, but maybe not though, because Navy does run the hybrid triple option like Army does. They're killing it on the ground. And I think that's probably going to happen again in this game. For UAB, they haven't really looked great this year. Their defense gave up over 250 rushing yards to Arkansas 2 weeks ago. And now UAB has to go against a triple option Navy team. Now, they have had 2 weeks to prepare for the triple option, unlike in the Army game with Temple. But that being said, it's only 2 weeks, and your running game gave up 250 yards to Arkansas. They're going to get a ton more yards against a triple option team. So I don't think UAB is going to be able to hang into this one. I'm kind of surprised the spread's only 3.5, but I'm definitely taking Navy minus 3.5. That's minus 115, so I'm going to put 1.2 units on that one. Next one that we're doing is a big game, playoff implications. Louisville at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is -7, minus 230 on the money line. Louisville is plus 188 on the money line. The over-under is 45.5. If you remember this game from 2 years ago, Louisville actually beat Notre Dame and basically just blew up their playoff chances. So this could be a revenge game for Notre Dame. But in that game last year, Braum outcoached Freeman pretty much across the board. On top of that, the Cardinals had a 21% havoc rate last year against a much better offensive line than Notre Dame has this year. And so far this year, Louisville is 6th in the havoc ranking. So they haven't lost a step when it comes to batting balls, getting sacks, interceptions, tackle for losses. This Louisville Cardinals defense is still rolling. And now they're going to be playing against the Notre Dame offense that doesn't have the offensive line they had last year and has a banged up Riley Leonard at quarterback, who I don't trust at all and trust even less banged up. On top of that, they also have a better offense than they had last year, depending on who you ask, with Tyler Shuck at quarterback. He's been slinging it to Alabama transfer Ja'Cory Brooks. They have Brooks has 17 catches for almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns so far. I think this Louisville team is just going to wreak havoc on Notre Dame. I'm not sure if they can get the outright win because it is at Notre Dame, and that is a pretty big spot. But I think they absolutely cover. I see this like Notre Dame winning by a field goal. So I'm going to take Louisville +7. It's minus 120. So I'm going to put 1.2 units on that one. The next game that I'm going to talk about is probably going to be an absolute clusterfuck of a game. But you can make money in clusterfucks, so that's what we're going to do. Oklahoma at Auburn. Oklahoma is -2.5, minus 130 on the money line. Auburn is plus 108 on the money line, and the over-under is 45.5. Both of these teams have a ton of question marks around them. Neither one has a good quarterback. Neither one, in my opinion, really has a great coach. I mean, maybe Oklahoma, but we can't really tell. I can't really tell, at least with the start of this year, because it looks like they're just making a lot of mistakes. But the quarterbacks are obviously the big part of both these teams just kind of falling apart. On top of that, Hugh Freeze for Auburn, if you've been watching him the last couple of days, he said a whole bunch of dumb shit in interviews talking about how the last 2 games they've played where they've lost, if they play those games 9 more times, they win all 9 games and all this shit. You know, as an Oklahoma team, you got to look at these interviews and think, you know, this coach is talking all this shit. We need to go in there and just beat his ass. You know, I don't. He's just fueling the fire for Oklahoma, in my opinion. But I don't really know. Maybe I'm overlooking that a little bit. But even take out Hugh Freeze running his mouth, I still think Auburn has a ton of questions. Now they have been able to move the ball pretty well on offense, mainly in the running game. But they make a lot of mistakes. They have a lot of dumb penalties, and you would think they cleaned it up, but they do it every single week. So at some point, you got to think that this is just that team. On top of that, Oklahoma's defense is probably what's going to keep them in this game, depending on who's at quarterback, which I think it will be the backup. Oklahoma's defense ranks 27th in opponent scoring, and they've played considerably better teams than Auburn has. So I think as long as Oklahoma can bring down the turnovers, which they've had 5 of already this season, they, you know, regardless of the QB play, they should be able to win this game. So I have Oklahoma -2.5. That's minus 110. So 1.1 unit on that one as well. And now for the game that has been in the news all day today, if you've been paying attention to this at all, Fresno State at UNLV. UNLV is -1.5, minus 118 on the money line. Fresno State is minus 102 on the money line, and the over-under is 48.5. If you looked at this spread yesterday afternoon, UNLV was, I believe, 4.5-point favorites. It's down to 1.5 now because their starting quarterback, Sluka, basically went on Twitter and said, "Hey, I'm done because I haven't gotten paid like they said I would. So I'm just going to redshirt and just try to get paid next year." Absolutely crazy ass situation. Also, their running back Michael Allen, who's their fourth leading rusher this year, he's also deciding to redshirt, so he's done for the season as well. But his reason isn't NIL. His reason is he hasn't gotten as much playing time as apparently he was promised to come in. So he's basically saying, fuck y'all and dipping out too. The Sluka situation is nuts, though. Apparently he was promised a bunch of money. He never got it. So he's just hanging it up to play next year because this is his last year of eligibility. But either way you look at it, they're not going to be with their start. They're going to be without their starting quarterback. They're also going to be without their leading rusher because he's the leading rusher on the team. And he's the majority of this offense. They're also going to be without Michael Allen, their fourth leading rusher. And the backup is a big question mark. That being said, I liked Fresno State before all of this news dropped. I thought they had a great chance of winning with Sluka. So now that he's gone, I like it even more. Obviously, I would have liked the +4.5 a little bit more, but I don't think it matters because I think Fresno State is winning this game outright. Fresno State is going to test UNLV's secondary more than they have any other team has so far this season. And I don't think they're going to be able to put up nearly as many points as Fresno State will be able to with this big question mark on offense now. So Fresno State money line -102, 1.1 unit on that one. The next one I think is pretty easy here. Iowa State at Houston. Iowa State's -13.5, -710 on the money line. Houston is +490 on the money line, and the over-under is 43.5. I made a mistake of thinking Houston actually had an offense last week. I'm not going to do that again. The offense is just bad, and I don't think their defense is going to be able to stop the Cyclones' offense either. They've been rolling this year. They've put up over 400 yards of offense and 31 points a game, and Iowa State's defense hasn't allowed more than 19 points a game. So this seems like a pretty simple one to me. I think the Iowa State team is just going to feast on Houston. And yeah, Iowa State -13.5, -128. And I'm going to actually double this one up. I have 2.6 units on this one. Next one that I'm talking about, next to last one, Tulsa at North Texas. North Texas is -6.5. -225 on the money line. Tulsa is +184 on the money line. And the over-under is 68.5. Yeah, I'm once again betting on North Texas like I have every week so far this season. They've only cost me once, so I'm going to keep rolling with them. The offense is just too electric not to cover this game. They've covered over 9 of their last 10 times against conference teams at home. Tulsa is coming off an overtime win to Louisiana Tech where they were outscored 13-3 in the fourth quarter. And Tulsa's defense is giving up over 30 points a game. So the Mean Green should be able to score at will, and I don't think Tulsa's offense can keep up with North Texas. So North Texas -6.5, -110, 1.1 unit on that one as well. Last game that I'm going to talk about is the game that everybody's talking about, and for good reason. Georgia at Alabama, the big game of the weekend. Georgia is 2.5-point favorites here, -126 on the money line. Alabama's +105 on the money line, and the over-under is 48.5. This game basically seems like a toss-up to me. It is pretty much every year these two teams play. Either team could win. But I really think this game's going to be decided in the trenches. And if you go back 2 weeks and look at Georgia's game against Kentucky, their offensive and defensive lines did not look great at all. Kentucky seemed to kind of move them when they wanted to, and that's why that game was so close. Whereas Alabama's lines have looked a little bit better. And then when you combine that with Carson Beck and the Georgia's offense looking a little bit stagnant at times, and Milroe having the added benefit of being able to run the ball, I think Alabama, I don't know why I just said Miami, Jesus Christ. I think Alabama keeps this one close and probably ends up winning by a field goal. So I'm going to go Alabama money line in this one, +105, so 1 unit on that one. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about real quickly is the 2 parlays that I like for this weekend. I'm going to go ahead and throw them up on screen so you can kind of read along with me so I don't have to talk about it the entire time. I kind of have a big one and a small one. So the smaller one is a 4-leg parlay +517. And it's basically games that I've already talked about that I'm just kind of buying down a little bit. And so plus 517, I have Army minus 6.5. That's that Thursday game. So make sure you get this one in a little bit quicker. Nebraska minus 6.5. Maryland and Indiana over 48.5. And then Iowa State minus 13.5. And then for the big one, plus 1185. So almost plus 1200, mess with it on if you with a little bit if you want to. Once again, Indiana and Maryland over 48.5. Indiana money line, Tulane money line, Nebraska minus 3.5, Fresno State plus 7.5, and North Texas money line and Iowa State minus 9.5. So kind of correlates. You can see the correlation within the parlays. These are basically just the teams that I really like or like the most on this slate. So you can also kind of gauge that with my plays and how you want to look at that as well. But those are the two parlays that I like. That is it for this episode. I appreciate y'all that hung out with me. If y'all could go on ahead and like the video if you haven't liked it already. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Of course, I don't know why you wouldn't be subscribed yet if you're here watching my videos. And yeah, tomorrow, NFL picks. Make sure you check that one out as well. And I'll see you on the next one.